Hello, I hope you're doing well and that you're enjoying the approach of spring, which I actually always love, even though summer is my favorite season, but there's just something so magical about things coming alive and things starting to bloom, so I really love that season. That is definitely my second favorite. Speaking of favorite seasons, let me know which season is your favorite in the comments below. I'd love to know. And now, after this rather lengthy introduction, let's get into planning. Supplies I'm going to be using for the setup this time are actually really simple. I'm only going to be using a few pens, and I'm going to be using watercolors. And yes, there is washi tape in the corner, and I thought I would use it, but I'm actually not going to, so sorry about that. Anyways, I haven't used watercolor in quite a few years, but I've watched a whole bunch of people on YouTube using it, and it always comes out magical and incredible, and I really miss watercolor as well, so I figured I'd give it a try and start with something really simple. Also, I actually really like keeping things simple for my bullet journals, so that my spreads are easier to recreate and so that they don't take up too much time. And in the spirit of simplicity, and because I knew that my spreads were going to be super bright and I didn't want the title, or rather the name of the month, to compete with the rest of what was going on, I decided to keep it very simple and I just used a plain black cursive. And after that, it was time to start the fun part, which was drawing the trees. And here I'm just doing that with a simple black pen and I'm drawing the outline. I was really happy because this pen is actually waterproof, so I knew that I would be going over it with watercolor and I could actually do that. So, yay! Unfortunately, this particular fine liner is no longer sold, but I'll definitely try to find similar options and link them in the description below. My final step before actually going for the watercolor was adding a quote to the right side of the spread. I decided to pretty much fill up the entire right side with the quote, and I've never done that before, but I think I kind of like it. Although I might change how I actually end up, filling the spread a little bit, because I think I didn't like as much just how much space the quote took. I might want to add a few more drawings or doodles or washi tape around it, but it was good enough for a start. The quote I chose here says, "I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails." And it's definitely a very positive quote, and I just really like it. So I thought that I would add it here, and I knew that I definitely wanted to add something positive, since I will be staring at this page a lot, and I wanted to add something that would motivate me a little bit and raise my mood. And I definitely do have a problem with negative thinking, so I think that this will help. Now for the watercolor, and you can see here that I'm actually going to be attempting cherry blossom trees, so I'm going to be using a whole bunch of pink colors. And I'm starting off with this light peachy pink. I wanted to add a lot of different colors to the trees, all variations of pink shades, because I wanted them to have a little bit more dimension. But I also didn't want to try too hard, so I'm pretty much just dotting the color onto the page. And I also added a few dots around the page just to make it look like they're floating petals around. next color I used was a deeper lilac color, and just like the peach color, I'm not going to use it much because I want to keep most of the colors in the brighter pink range, and I also wanted to make most of them metallic, but you'll see that in a second. And just like I said, I'm going to be using metallics now. And the first metallic color that I'm using is this lighter, brighter pink metallic color. And I'm using that to fill in a lot of the empty space that I'd left over from the previous, well, dabs of watercolor, because I wanted this to be the dominant color of the trees. And I chose to use metallic colors for the trees just because I've seen cherry blossom trees and branches done so many times, but I don't think I've ever seen them done with metallic colors, so I thought that this would be a fun little experiment. Also, of course, I love metallics and I love all things sparkly, and if you've seen any of my other videos, then you probably know this by now. So I decided that metallics were a good way to go. The last color I'm using is this super vibrant metallic pink, and I actually didn't use it as much as the lighter pink, but it looks so much brighter, so it looks like I used it a lot more, but I don't mind it. I actually really like how this came out, and I really think that this is not bad for my first attempt at watercolor in many years. So yeah, I'm actually really happy. My final touch for this spread was adding some more lines to the top tree, because I actually forgot to do that earlier, so I'm doing that here. The next spread, I'm actually starting off with one of the several mistakes that I will be making in this video, and here I misspelled tracker on, well, the left side of the page, and on the right side of the page my writing was kind of diagonally down. I don't know why that happens to me, but I tend to kind of make my writing lower and lower as I keep writing. Anyways, I decided to fix that by cutting up some of my back pages and putting the pieces over, well, my mistakes. By the way, this is a great way to cover up your mistake, because if you use the back pages of your journal, then the pages are going to be the same color, and it's not really going to be that noticeable that you have another piece of paper glued on top, especially if you line up the dots. Now that the mistakes were taken care of, it was time to start working on the actual spreads. And I started off with my mood tracker, and I honestly had no idea what I was going to do here. But after some thinking, I settled on making a big tree outline and adding some numbers. And those numbers are going to represent areas where I will be drawing a certain color. And yes, I know that I forgot the legend. I will add that in later. Sorry about that. Anyways, I'm just going to be sort of dabbing color onto those areas to make it look like, well, sort of what I had on the title page. And I thought that this was kind of a fun idea. I've never actually seen anyone else do this before, but if you have, let me know. I'm really curious to see someone else's version of this. Next up, it was time for the habit tracker, and here I'm using my favorite calendar stamps yet again, and you will see that I make my second mistake here, and it is when I try to stamp one of the calendars. I didn't realize that because it's a new journal, it doesn't really have as much support on that area of the page as my other journals did, so I couldn't figure out why the calendar just wasn't stamping properly. In the end, I messed it up to the point where I had to use the same trick to cover it up, but I did figure out what the problem was, so the rest of the calendars came out much better. My final touch for the spread was adding a few more of those pink dots all around, just to make it look a little bit more interesting and to add a little bit more color, since it did look a little bit plain just with calendars on it. And my next spread is my calendar spread. And if you've seen some of my other videos where I've also set up calendars, you'll know that this is the spread where I make the most mistakes, and this time was no exception. So my first mistake was that I didn't remember that this particular month does not start on a Sunday, so I had to move the top row to the, well, opposite corner. And my second mistake was actually not remembering that this month had 6 rows instead of 5, which meant that my scale was completely off. And you can see me trying to fix the first mistake before I realized what was happening, but when I realized that I completely messed up the scale, I would have to just white out everything or chop up an entire page to cover up all of my wrong calendars, so I decided to just glue the 2 pages together and move on to the next one. And on this fresh brand new page, you can see that I'm starting off strong by making the same mistake yet again and messing up the start date. But this time I noticed it fairly quickly, and at least the scale was correct, so I actually could cover it up with a square of paper from the back. On a happier note, I did eventually manage to set up my calendar spread, and I went for this sort of open calendar where I only drew one corner of each, I don't know, date. And I really liked that. I actually did that last month, and I decided to repeat that again for this month. And after writing in the days of the week, it was time to decorate the spread, and I did that with another tree. So I pretty much just drew the same tree outline, and I filled it in the same colors that I did for my title page. Despite how much trouble this calendar spread was, I did in the end really liked the result, and I really liked how this came out. I'm not sure how useful the smaller calendar will be, but I didn't really have much of a choice because I did need to add 6 rows in there, so hopefully I'll still be able to write all of the important things that I need to into every little space for my dates. And I actually really liked how the tree came out as well. I really am enjoying using the metallics for my cherry blossom trees. The last spread I'm going to be setting up in this video is my tasks and review spread. And here I'm drawing another tree, this time in the middle of the page to decorate the spread. But I didn't actually add a base to it because I didn't want to make it overly tall, because I felt that then the top would look just too small and, I don't know, weird in comparison to the rest of the tree. And I definitely didn't want to make it too large because I still wanted to have some space to write in for these spreads. So I settled for just not adding a base, and I think that this came out kind of interesting, although I do like the cherry trees better with the base, but this is still fine. As I was drawing the tree, I also added a few dots around the headings just to make that area a little bit more interesting and to make it look like there were floating cherry tree blossoms or leaves. And now it's time for the final flip through, where I show you all of the spreads that I've been setting up in this video. And I have to say, I'm actually quite happy with how they came out. I haven't used watercolor in quite a while, although I did remember that it hasn't been a few years. I did use it once, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. But before that I hadn't used it in a few years, and after that haven't used it since that time, so I've only used it twice. I think I confused myself. Anyways, I really hope that you like these spreads and this video. Please let me know if you did in the comments below and which spread was your favorite. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have an amazing month. Bye!